Hey guys, I am excited to share this with you because quite honestly, I have never loved any of the 90-second toast recipes that kind of float around. They're generally too high in carbs. And so this is something I've come up with that really is low carb, and I think it's actually good. Now notice I didn't say 90-second bread, I said 90-second toast. There's a reason for that. Now also, I want to tell you, this is a chance for me to talk to you a little bit about oat fiber. And my husband's like, the oat fiber showing? I'm like, I want it to. This is, and of course I opened it upside down. Do I dare turn it around? This is Life Source oat fiber. No affiliation. I don't make any money from recommending them, but Life Source oat fiber is the only brand I tend to use. Trim Healthy Mama had one that was fine, but I think now they sell a blend. I'm not really sure, but the only two I would ever use is Life Source or the Trim Healthy Mama that's just the oat fiber. Oat fiber is the pure insoluble fiber from the outside of the husk. It's naturally gluten-free. And hear me again, it's the pure insoluble fiber. So I've actually done some background on it, and when it's used with type 1 diabetics and type 2 diabetics, it doesn't raise blood glucose. That doesn't mean it won't bother you. So if you're diabetic, always test. But in general, because it's insoluble fiber, it's not absorbed, passes through the body exactly as it comes in, then in general, it's not likely to impact blood glucose. So I do use oat fiber. Now you can make this recipe with coconut flour, because oat fiber is hard to find. Oat fiber generally has to be ordered online. I'll link for you in the recipe some resources to find the oat fiber. So I'm starting with 2 tablespoons of oat fiber. If you want to use coconut flour, use 2 teaspoons. Coconut flour goes a lot further, but it has a lot more carbs, and it's not pure insoluble fiber. I'm using almond flour. This is 3 tablespoons of almond flour. If you're allergic to nuts, you may be able to use sunflower seed fiber. The ice maker's talking to us, so if you hear that, that's what it is. And then I'm using psyllium fiber. Now, psyllium fiber, again, you may have to order it online. I've been using, this is the Now brand, and again, I'll link to these resources in the recipe. But the psyllium fiber gives it a great texture. This is 1 teaspoon. You can often find it in the laxative aisle if you do unflavored Metamucil. I was going to try and get all that almond flour. I hate it when some of the ingredients stick. Okay, so we've added 2 tablespoons of oat fiber, 3 of almond flour, and 1 teaspoon of psyllium. This is a teaspoon of baking powder. The baking powder is what's going to give it a really nice rise, so don't be afraid to throw that in there. And then salt. This is a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I have melted butter, and I have an egg, and I have hot water. And you can just use hot tap water. You don't need to do anything special. What I'm gonna add first is the water, and what I like to do whenever you're dealing with psyllium fiber, it can tend to clump. So before you add any moisture, just take your spatula, or you can use a whisk if you want, but just give it a really quick stir. Because what happens, like I said, if you don't, when that moisture hits the psyllium fiber, it can clump, and that's not really pleasant. You know, you don't want that. So I'm just giving that a nice little stir. I'm going to put in my 2 tablespoons of hot water, and I love this thing. This is in my Kristie store. I love this because it's a liquid measure, and it's built into it, and it has ounces, it has milliliters, it has cups. I love this thing. But anyway, so let me measure in 2 of hot water. And again, usually you can use hot tap water. The hot water helps with the psyllium, again, keeping it from clumping. I'm using 2 tablespoons of butter. If you're dairy-free, use coconut oil because it makes it a nice dairy-free option. If you can handle ghee, use ghee for dairy-free. Some people who are dairy-free can handle ghee. And then I'm gonna add my egg. And a little tip here, I should be putting the egg in something else and stirring it up before I put it in here, because you want the egg really well beaten. So I'm not even following my own recipe. But the reason for that, and you'll see it probably when we make the bread, if you don't get the egg really well beaten, then you'll have those little white pieces in the bread. And I know that if you have a picky eater like we do, that Jonathan will say, Mom, what's this little white speck? Well, it's egg white that is cooked because it wasn't well mixed. So anyway, you want to mix it pretty well. And then there are multiple ways you can do this, and I'm going to show you a couple of options. But what I tend to do is I have these Ramekins, and I bought these at Michael's for 99 cents, and I had 6, and I was making this and broke one. Dropped it right on the floor because it was hot. So remember that, that's really super hot. You can divide it and put it in 2 Ramekins, and it'll be thicker. It'll also be more carbs per serving. So I'm going to put it in 3. When I put it in 3, I think it's just the perfect thickness to slice it and toast it. And yes, we're going to toast it in a traditional toaster. So if you gave away your toaster, get it back. No, if you gave away your toaster, you can still toast these in a hot skillet, or you can use a broiler. Use your toaster oven or your regular oven to broil it. Okay. So now if we're going to put this in 3, and I had some people test this and they're like, Kristie, it's really hard to do 3s. It is. So you're just going to kind of visually divide it, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and you just drop it in there. And what I tend to do is I do what I think is a fair thirds, and then if I need to get a little spoon and move some around, I will. But that looks pretty even to me. Again, I'm going to get like everything out of here. The first one may be the short guy. I don't know, because this guy doesn't look very full either. But you're just going to smooth it into the ramekin, and you don't push it down, but just smooth it around as best you can. The top will probably be lumpy, but just smooth it around. And again, I'm making 3. You can make 2 to make it thicker. You'll see kind of how the thickness is. And then I'm going to pop them in the microwave all at once. Yeah, this guy had a little more batter, so I can add it to that if I want to. And really, the only difference is it's gonna cook through. The difference is just going to be the thickness that you have for slicing when you put it in the toaster. All right, let me smooth this guy. And I didn't get the toaster out. I'll have to. And I've said toaster 3 times to try and get David to get it. But I think he's on Facebook or something. He's not paying me attention. But we're going to get the toaster and do this. Okay, yeah, I'm amusing myself. Okay, so my oven, my microwave oven, is a 1250 watt microwave. So if yours is a different wattage, you may have to adjust the cooking time on this. And yes, if you don't have a microwave, you can put these in a traditional oven. So I'm going to put it in here, do 90 seconds, and we should have some bread to toast shortly. Okay. In the meantime, let me show you what I did. I took this, while that's cooking, I took the bread, I took a mixture, and I put it in a loaf pan. And so, if you'll, David just moved out of my reach. Behind the scenes, it is so hard to do his job. This is just a standard loaf pan. And it is, I'm trying to read the size on it. I can't read the size, but it's just a standard glass loaf pan. I may hand it off to David and see if he can read it. But I greased it, and I put the batter in here. Now, when you get through cooking it, you want to turn it out onto a cooling rack if you have one. If you don't have a cooling rack, it's a great thing to get. Put that on your Christmas list. And I'll put it in my Kristie's Amazon list. But you can just cut it in half like this. And you can put it in a toaster like that. It's somewhat thin to try to slice this again. I have done so, but you can put it in the, again, it's a matter of the carbs. So I'm going to try to slice it. We'll see how far I get. If you have a smaller loaf pan or anything square, because the bread's going to bake to whatever shape you use. And I just didn't do that right at all. I made a mess with it. It's not thick enough. Oh well, I'll toast it, and you can see. I don't think I'm smart enough to do this one. I'll try, but I probably am just going to end up with 2 thin pieces that work. Okay, so there we go. That is okay. It's not great. It's okay. And if you taste it now, it's okay as a bread substitute. But honestly, if you toast it, it is fantastic. So let me put this in the toaster. And yeah, I shouldn't have tried to slice those, I guess. But use a rectangular pan, and you'll get that shape that you want. All right, let's see how our round mugs have done. And again, like I said, they'll be a ton thicker. if you use only 2 instead of 3. So these are going to be super hot. Make sure you use a towel to get them out of the microwave. And again, you need to toast them. You don't want to try, well, you can try eating them this way, but toast them up. I've used these like with eggs. You can put a sunny side up egg on them. Some people have said they have more of an English muffin taste. There are definitely nooks and crannies. And David says it's 5 by 9, by the way. What I use is 5 by 9. Honestly, a 4 by 8 would be perfect. So I wouldn't use anything larger than a 5 by 9, but if you use something smaller that's rectangular, see, there you go. And again, I think these are great. Again, I think these are great size for toasting, but you can make 2. As far as the carbs are going to be in the almond flour. There are 23 carbs in 1 cup of almond flour. And so if you say there's 16 tablespoons in one, you can roughly say 1.5 tablespoons of almond flour and 1.5 carbs. So the whole thing, there are 3 tablespoons of almond flour. So you've got 1.5 tablespoons total carbs per that just from the almond flour. I don't count any from the oat fiber because it's pure and soluble. And then the psyllium husk is similar, although I do count, I think, 1 carb per. And then you've got an egg, and so you could do one kind of divided among those. So at most you're looking about 2.5 carbs per serving when you do them as 3. And again, you're going to let this dry out. Now honestly, it works better if you let them dry for some time, but I'm going to go ahead and divide these. The more they dry out, the better it toasts, and just the better it is. And it does slice more easily when it's not so hot. And you can see that. Again, for me, that's a perfect size. You can imagine if I had only made 3, they would be much thicker. And I honestly, I had given up on bread. I'll say I use the hashtag ask me if I miss bread. And I kind of given up on it, but when I saw other recipes going around that were really higher carb than I liked, and then I tried this, I wanted to come up with something that was truly lower carb. And I didn't want anything eggy, because one of the issues with these 90-second breads is they're so eggy, because usually it's 1 egg per recipe per toast. So I was determined to try to get fewer eggs in there so that it would be less eggy. And of course the oat fiber gives it that wonderful mouthfeel that we're used to with breads. So that was part of my thought. Okay, it still needs to toast a bit. I'll put this guy in. Okay, I'm gonna check the toast again. And that's a little bit better. It's browned. This will go from kind of it doesn't ever get totally golden. It will burn. So let me try this. And this is gorgeous. Now, honestly, this is enough for me. I would not eat both of those, even with those pieces sliced off. But I would put some butter on there. And I would also make a breakfast sandwich. So imagine if I had a fried egg here and some bacon. And again, to me, this is a lot of bread. So probably make it in a 4 by 6 bread pan is the best, or just do it around the Ramekins. Cut it in half. Maybe put a little more butter. My butter is trying to get away. Put a little more butter. And honestly, I haven't had bread in 6 years, over 6 years, but this is the closest thing to bread. I really love it. I've made French toast with it. I've used it as breadcrumbs in recipes, let it dry out like you would other breadcrumbs, and I just really do love this, and I love the carb count. Let me see if the round ones are toasted. Okay, the round ones are done, so let's take a look at those. And you'll see how it's toasted up. Not like gorgeous brown, but a little brown around the edges. And you can see kind of the nooks and crannies that are in that thing. So good. And it does remind me a bit more of an English muffin. But again, when you haven't had bread. And these are great. Put a sunny, oh, they're hot. Put a sunny side up egg on there. put a little bacon, put some butter. I have enjoyed them with pesto. I was making homemade pesto. I'm going to show you how to do that next spring, summer when our basil gets ready. But it's fantastic with some homemade pesto. A few little slices of tomato. You can do ham and cheese and take it for lunch. Serve it in all kinds of ways. So I can't wait to hear what you guys make with it. And if you make it for your family, I hope that they enjoy it too.